If you've been thinking about getting serious with your money, like actually serious, now's the time. The Motley Fool is offering new members 50% off their iconic stock recommendation service, Stock Advisor. This is the same service that's crushed the market with recommendations that have returned 1,057% since inception, compared to the S&P 500's 180% over that same period. This isn't guesswork. The Motley Fool has a track record of finding companies before they become household names. So if you want to invest smarter and you like saving money while doing it, go to fool.com/listen to claim your 50% off discount off a 1-year term of Stock Advisor. Again, that's fool.com/listen. Returns of 1,057% are from the Motley Fool's product Stock Advisor and measured against S&P 500 returns of 180% as of July 10th, 2025. Past performance is not an indicator of future results. All investing involves a risk of loss. Individual investment results may vary.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Monday, September the 22nd. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get the week off to a flying start. That requires your participation. So, if you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air, 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So what a home opener for the Newfoundland Regiment playing in the Quebec Maritime Junior Hockey League. Back-to-back wins over the defending champion, the Moncton Wildcats. So brilliant stuff. Just, we talked about the local players and the front office and all the rest of it. How about a shout-out to 18-year-old Sept, the play-by-play man. And the color analyst is Brian Rogers, of course, veteran of the broadcast booth. And our very own Chris Batstone just started his 21st year down at Mary Brown Centre as the public address announcer, so bravo. In Game 1, when young Seth Hyatt is calling the game, they give out the numbers of who won the numbers of the 50-50 winner, and then lo and behold, and he covers it live, it was his mother. He says, my mom won the 50-50. It was over $37,000. So amazing stuff. Mom won the 50-50. Anyway, for those of you watching some rugby, Team Canada at the Women's Rugby World Cup, what a performance on Friday afternoon. Playing against New Zealand. New Zealand had only ever lost 3 games ever in a World Cup, and Canada absolutely dismantled them. Absolutely comprehensive beating. Off they go now to the final next Saturday against the host England. England number 1 in the world. The English women's side have won 32 consecutive test matches. That's a record, whether you talk about women and or men's test rugby. So up against it, but we look fantastic. And very quickly, the Jays clinch a playoff spot, even though they've looked pretty ragtag here. They got to win yesterday to clinch. All right. Want to get into this one, and unfortunately, I hear these stories every now and then. It's about people being scammed from a variety of fronts. And this one was someone got into their bank account. And then lo and behold, I read the news this morning and there's a story about banks and the fact that so many of them are not there for you if you do indeed get scammed. They'll say the onus is on the customer or the client to protect their own information and account or what have you. But boy, oh boy. All right, let's get into a couple of these things. For starters, apparently the most popular password, according to NordPass, in Canada and dozens of other countries, most popular password in 2025 is 123456. And the next one, 1234567889. Probably not a very good password, so maybe a good idea to change those. And please do indeed set yourself up for 2-factor authentication. It feels like a bit of a pain in the neck, but of course, really helpful stuff. And get some alerts on your phone to monitor your banking information. Do not add any circumstance give anybody your personal information. And then you have to be extremely careful when you download a banking app. It can be quite convenient, but there's phony apps out there and they look a lot like the real ones. So that is also a particularly good idea. It's a real shame, the story I read in an email over the weekend, and they lost $45,000. That was every cent they had. Anyway, just fair warning. All right, so municipal elections are coming up on the 2nd of October. I get plenty of emails asking, do I know X, Y, or Z about one candidate or another? And sometimes I have a bit of information because I just, Google search their name. Sometimes they have their own website or whatever the case may be. But in the city of St. John's, pretty good idea from Happy City St. John's, they've set up a voters website, simply stjohnsvotes.ca. So you can get the candidate profiles and platforms, voter procedure, election dates and deadlines, district maps, accessibility information for all voters. So not every municipality has that horsepower to create these types of websites, but if you're interested in St. John's, because there's a ton of candidates running, you can find it right there. All right. I feel bad for the candidates, whether it be municipally or provincially, who spent thousands of dollars on printing up flyers, and now Canada Post, the union, has decided they're not going to deliver those flyers. Just a quick mention, because one extremely frustrated candidate who's running a low-budget campaign, scrimped and saved, spent thousands of dollars on flyers. Now they're sitting in a box in the basement. Unless they're delivered by hand, they'll go unused. Okay. All right, let's get into the provincial campaign here. Plenty of conversations over the weekend. Just curious where people are. Not about what party they support necessarily, but things of importance to them. And it probably took me until I got to the 15th person for someone to mention the Upper Churchill Memorandum of Understanding, which, of course, Premier Hogan has made as one of the key issues that he's putting forward to the electorate for their consideration. On that front, because we've got to keep that conversation going, I've been sent a very thick, highly technical document, and I appreciate it, from Mike Wilson. Mike Wilson stepped down, of course, as one of the 3 people on the Oversight Committee. I'll dig into it and probably throughout the course of the week break down a little further the 5 headline areas that Mr. Wilson's concerned with. Number 1, he says that the board at Newfoundland Labrador Hydro has not fulfilled a key fiduciary responsibility. And we will, I promise, dig into these a little more detail throughout the course of the week, because it's really thick and I'm still trying to wrap my mind around. Fundamental structure of the MOU itself seriously flawed, says Mr. Wilson. The anticipated benefits are neither balanced nor fairly stated, and this is one where I'm going to have to spend a lot of time. Inflation and the time value of money have not been considered. Not all information provided to the public is accurate and complete. And of course, Jennifer Wilson and Premier Hogan and Premier Fury and a cast of others will disagree either in full or in part with some of Mr. Wilson's concerns. But let's please keep the conversation going. Whether you're in support of or whether you're opposed to, whether your thoughts are hinged on things like independent review, what have you, we're absolutely happy to keep it going. And like I told Mr. Wilson via email, I'll spend a significant amount of time trying to dig into that a little further. The number one concern I've heard from most is the fundamental of the cost of living. Because I think in reality, we can talk about these massive mega projects and highly technical concerns, and we absolutely have to consider it. But by and large, people are worried about cost of living, healthcare, crime, the obvious ones. And in the world of cost of living, we hear from different corners, like from Mr. Wakeham, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, talking about tax relief. Tax relief is a welcome conversation, I would suggest, for most. Obviously. If people have to spend less on taxes, it leaves more money for other things. I get it. But between tax relief that's proposed, whether it be the permanency of a gas tax cut or a 1% relief or reduce the small business tax, whatever the case may be, people latch onto that. But at the exact same time, we don't hear a whole lot from anybody about, for me, and we're talking about what kind of world we're leaving for our children and grandchildren, not a lot of talk about deficit and debt. There just isn't. We talk about promises to spend more, to do more, to offer more relief, whether it be at the pumps or your provincial portion of tax and cutting the provincial portion of HST off home heating fuel. Those types of things. People like that. But at the exact same time, we really do need to know exactly where the different parties are on trying to address the crushing debt that the province is experiencing. So really that's got to be up there somewhere in this type of conversation. What do you think? Also, when we were told that the economic roadmap for the future viability and stability of the province would be in the pages of the Premier's Economic Recovery Team report, the Green Report. Not a lot on that front either, because these were whopping big things. So, for instance, they've addressed the issue at Bull Arm, and so that's a good thing. And full well NARLA is going to be really aggressive in trying to ensure that Bull Arm is as busy as possible, whether it be with defence and the maintenance on class, the submarines, whatever the case may be. But some of the big ones, including divesting for things like the NLC, the Liquor Corp. It doesn't mean you do away with all the revenues coming from the NLC into provincial government coffers, because there will remain an excise tax on liquor and on cannabis products. So where is anybody on that one? Then there was thoughts, the recommendations about, like, for instance, motor vehicle and how that could be handled by the private sector. And one of the big ones was floating the concept of selling off our oil equity assets. That was in the Pert report, and full well it's in the Rothschild report, but hey, we're not allowed to see that one. Even though me and you paid for it, we're not allowed to have a look at it. The oil equity business is interesting. I mean, I have no idea what the value of our assets would be offshore. 4.9% equity in Hebron, 8.7% at Hibernia South Extension, 5% in the White Rose Extension Project, all of the assets at and intellectual property at Oilco. But they have significant value. And then, of course, we're still talking about if and when Beta Nord goes ahead, needing an equity stake there. And I think the number they're using is 10%. So where are some of those big issues? I haven't heard any of the parties speak specifically to some of those divesting recommendations coming from Green, and you would have to imagine, inside the pages of the Rothschild report. Hear people talk about critical minerals in Labrador, what that might mean for community benefits. Same conversation, I think, associated with Beta Nord, even though we know now, while presenting in Placentia, Equinor has pretty much said that there will be limited jobs here. Subsidy work and all that, absolutely. We think that's absolutely going to be the case. But even you think about something then, the quote-unquote topsides work, that can indeed be done here. It just can. We don't have the capacity or the laydown yard to take on the enormity of what will be the size of that FPSO, but work can be done here. And Equinor has pretty much said the quiet part out loud. It's not going to happen. So your thoughts on how we handle that. And, of course, however you want to tackle some of these big provincial issues, let's do it. Some conversation on education, not near enough. Obviously, for people inside the world of cost of living and otherwise, healthcare. We've heard plenty of pledges about what can be done inside the world of healthcare, even though it'd be nice if some of the parties would give us specific focus areas, concentration on the social determinants of health and what that can mean for the cost of delivery inside the healthcare system. Mental health, addictions, crime. Let's talk about whatever you think we need to have it under consideration as we assess who and who we're going to vote for. All right, let's keep going. Another issue, and I think I've heard Mr. Wakeham say that he would be against what is the proposed National Marine Conservation Area. The aquaculture industry is certainly opposed to it. So I think there's still some confusion as to what can and cannot proceed inside the National Marine Conservation Area, but there's plenty of consideration here. Okay, I've used that word many times already this morning. Aquaculture, some 2,500 jobs associated with it. When Parks Canada is going through what they call their feasibility study, looking at important things, ecological impact, social, cultural factors, but what is not being considered is economic impact. It should be part of the feasibility study. And I don't know if this is going to come to pass, but for the aquaculture industry, they say that it's stifling consideration, again, of investment on the southwest coast. I get that. We are not talking about an insignificant swath of water or land. It's 6,538 square kilometers. PEI is 5,660 square kilometers. So it's a massive swath of water. There's also a protest coming up on Thursday in Burgeo, which I'll talk about a little bit later in the week so we don't lose sight of it. But the National Marine Conservation Area, I've heard Mr. Wakeham say he's in opposition to it, but not so sure I've heard much on the other side. Look, protecting the land and protecting the water is important. Of course it is. How do you factor in economic impact? And where is there a balance to be struck there? Let's talk about it. All right. This one also, sometimes it gets considered, and I've spoken to this, and I've actually asked ministers responsible over the years about minimum wage. Look, minimum wage is sort of a ham-fisted approach to talk about how people get paid, an entry-level job, single mother with 2 children versus someone who lives at home. It's really not the most helpful gauge. But what is important is the labor standards. You're only obliged to pay overtime on a minimum wage standard. So overtime would be somewhere in the neighborhood, if you get double time, some 20 or 30 bucks on double time, 24 bucks on time and a half. We need to change that. It's simply not fair. Now, some employers will say, for instance, you're making 20 bucks an hour and time and a half will give you 30 bucks an hour as opposed to $24 an hour. But let's put it in the legislation. I have no earthly idea why that's an actual available loophole. If you work beyond 40 hours a week, your overtime should be time and a half for your actual wage. Not being paid time and a half on 15 bucks if you actually are making 20 bucks. So someone wanted me to put that out there, and that's an important one. I've kind of lost sight of that a few times in the recent past, but that's absolutely something that can and should be changed. All right. Oh, I see the man's name in the queue, Greg French. I've had Greg on the show many, many times. He's a lawyer based in Clarenville, and he talks about Crown lands, and he's got a pretty deep understanding of the Crown lands related matter. Then I see that Greg French is actually going to be the Liberal candidate in Terranova. He's been highly critical of the Liberals and their handling of the Crown Lands issue in the past. Premier Hogan says that's a good thing, and he's going to be taking on Lloyd Parrott, of course, who was the incumbent representing the PC party in Terra Nova. So Crown Lands back on it. They're talking about streamlining it or making it a more simplified process. You know, a better understanding of exactly what is not Crown Land. Because we know at this moment in time, it is an absolute boondoggle about how the Crown Lands issue is dealt with here. And, you know, two separate departments as opposed to one addressing the issue of Crown Lands, which I think is a pretty big conversation. I'm sure you do too. All right. Sometimes I can't even read my own writing. All right, I'll get to the callers quicker than usual here today. What we've got to stop doing is the knee-jerk reactions about who can or cannot say whatever the hell they like. We know the difference between inciting violence and intolerable racist hate speech, right? Even though people, for the most part, you can kind of say what you want, but there are consequences, of course there are. But now this concept of banning one voice that you don't like or another. And in this case, I don't know anything about this band or this act called Kneecap. They're an Irish trio, and they had sold-out shows in, I think, Vancouver and in Toronto, and they've been told they're not allowed to come, not allowed to play. Why? Because of some things they've said. Some of the lyrics, and I went and had a look at some of the lyrics, what have you, a lot of it's pretty innocuous, satirical kind of stuff, but they have indeed focused in on save or free Palestine. They've been critical of the Israeli military action in Gaza. They also at one point in a concert in Belfast, just after a visit by the monarch, he said, Brits out. And that was apparently really controversial in Ireland and in England. But, look, even if you think what they say is atrocious, it's not really anything over the top. They're not calling for any leadership at the IDF to be executed or held for treason. You know, they simply are talking about free Palestine. At the exact same time, Canada is now recognizing a free independent state of Palestine. And that's joining some, very recently, Australia and the United Kingdom, and some 145 countries in the world are acknowledging that. But it doesn't come with some sort of free pass. As far as I can tell by what I read, it talks about the return of the hostages, which I think everybody thinks needs to be done. It also talks about disarming Hamas, a terrorist organization. It also talks about banning Hamas from ever forming government ever into the future. So we're banning a band because they talk about free Palestine and protection for residents of the Gaza Strip and to not see any further advancement of Jewish communities in the West Bank, but they can't come play their show? Yeah. We're getting a little carried away here. Like, you can think that they are abhorrent, or you can think that you can't wait to see the show that you bought a ticket for in Toronto. But this bit about we're banning things so quickly these days, I'm not sure in the long run it's going to be helpful. Just paint the picture in your own mind's eye. It might be a decision you agree with today, insofar as banning Kneecap, the Irish trio, hip-hop. But when government changes hands sometimes in the future, and governments into the future will do the same things, like banning what they oppose or banning what their voters oppose, we're just going to have this circular nature of quashing or quelling people's ability to sing about what they want. If you're not calling for violence, if you're not targeting one ethnic group, if you're not targeting people with whatever sexual orientation, then can we not just be grown up about it? And if we disagree, can we just talk about it? Things are getting pretty carried away. Anyway, you want to take it on? Let's go. We're on Twitter. We're VOCM Open Line. You can follow us there. Email address is openon@vocm.com. When we come back, let's have a great show. That means you're in the queue to talk about whatever's on your mind. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's begin this morning on line number 2. Good morning, Ross. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. How are you this fine day?
Doing okay, thank you. How about you?
Good, thank you. Paddy, I'd like to ask a couple of questions about this MOU. I don't know all that much about it, but my understanding is that we still have over 40 years on this Churchill Falls contract. Is that correct?
No. The contract expires in 2041.
Okay, in 2041.
Yep.
Okay, so that would be how many years?
16.
That's, 16 years.
Yep.
Okay. The reason I'm saying that, Paddy, from what I've been hearing, and there's a lot of the smart people in Newfoundland, the politicians and prior politicians and everything, and there's a lot of confusion about this, and some agree and some disagree. Myself, personally speaking, I don't think this MOU should be taken into consideration for the election coming up right now. That should be put on the wayside and go about their political things as normal. The reason I'm saying that, Paddy, is because when Churchill Falls first came out, and it was Joey Smallwood at the time, everybody said, "Oh, Joey signed it away," or different things. Danny Williams done, "Oh, Danny done this," and Brian Peckford done this, and Clyde Wells done that. I don't know why a government that will be elected now and is only going to be in for 4 years, and then they have to seek re-election. This memorandum in Churchill Falls is apparently something that's going to affect Newfoundlanders for generations to come. My personal thoughts on it is that, yes, let the smart people and the boards and everything hash it out between them, come up with the best deal, and then put it to a vote by the Newfoundlanders. Put it as a referendum. The same as when Newfoundland joined Confederation, there was a referendum. You don't hear anything about, Joey Smallwood sold us off to Confederation. The people of Newfoundland voted, and their vote was 51 to 49, and we joined Canada. Why can't this be brought forward? Let all the smart people hash it out, come out with all the particulars, and then put it to the people of Newfoundland where everybody gets one chance to vote.
Yeah.
And then if it ends up as a bad deal, in the end, you can't blame a certain person, and it's going to be unanimous by the people of Newfoundland.
It will never be unanimous, no matter what we're talking about. But, it's hard not to have it part of the political conversation leading into October 14th, because it is highly political. We can,
Yes.
and sometimes it's a little bit unfortunate that we're not talking about Party A negotiating a contract with Party B, or maybe 10 or 12 contracts. So until the negotiations are complete and we actually have a better understanding of exactly what the definitive agreements look like, I think we're just kind of spitballing what may or may not be a good or a bad plan. And the referendum conversation, people hate when I say it, but I just don't think that's a great idea. For starters, not everybody has the amount of time and or energy and or brain space to have a full, complete understanding of exactly what's going on here. And that's a funny thing to say, but whether or not we join Canada was probably a little bit more of a straightforward question than what's included in the MOU at this moment in time. Like, if I ask, I said this last week, and boy, I got blistered for it, but I think it's probably true, is if I put out the referendum question, do you or do you not support this memorandum of understanding, and or when we get closer to the actual contracts, if people don't like the Liberals, they're probably going to vote against it. If people don't like, or they don't trust Quebec, they're probably going to vote against it. So we'll probably have an emotional result as opposed to a pragmatic result. What do you think?
I'm not sure. Like myself, I tend to be leery of Quebec. Quebec would not allow a pipeline to Atlantic Canada, right? One question that probably should be proposed to the government of Quebec is, would they allow a right-of-way for Newfoundland Hydro to reach the east coast of the United States? See, we're sort of caught between a rock and a hard place. We have the resource, but we don't have the right-of-way to get it to the consumers that are buying it. And with all this new technology coming up now about electric cars and blah, 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 energy from hydro is going to be worth unbelievable amounts of money. And I just don't think that a few people should decide the fate of generations of people. Like, election promises are cheap, and a lot of them don't get done. And this is why I'm saying the referendum, and that way there's nobody can be blamed.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from there, Ross. And the concept of being allowed to flow power through Quebec and access to the northeastern United States, that would be great. But forever and a day, the province of Quebec has simply said no. And they have the jurisdictional authority to say exactly that. And we have the authority to say no to whatever someone proposes to flow anything through this province. The whole concept of that free flow of power, look, that's been reinstigated by the Prime Minister. He's talked about it specifically. Whether or not it's ever going to happen, I have no earthly idea. But to not consider that possibility inside these eventual contracts would be a mistake.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. like Quebec has gotten rich over Churchill Falls over the years. There's no doubt about it. I've actually traveled from Matan all the way to Labrador City, and I know all about the Manic 5 dams and the hydro coming down through. I've seen it with my own eyes. And if Newfoundland was getting a very fair deal with the hydro, Newfoundland would not be a have-not province. I just hope that this time we don't end up back in the same boat. Like talk is cheap, and that's why there's so much of it, but you got to take everything in consideration.
Understood.
You know, now that being said, if we said to Quebec, okay, no, you're not getting any more power when the contract was up is over, where's Quebec going to get their power? Where are they going to go then?
Well, they'll certainly have options.
They
There's plenty of
won't be
options.
able to supply they won't be able to supply the eastern seaboard like they do now, making millions off of Churchill Falls.
Well, they'll still have access to the power, though, Ross. That's something that also gets misunderstood out there. In 2041, it does not mean that the Upper Churchill is 100% ours and we can do what we want, because it's just not true. 2041 presents an opportunity to renegotiate the price per kilowatt hour, because the division of equity stakes remains exactly the same. So that's what 2041 represents. It doesn't mean all of a sudden the Upper Churchill is ours. And even if it did, unless there was a way to get the power from the Churchill River to market, which currently all that transmission is owned by the province of Quebec and Hydro-Quebec, is we'd simply have a big dam with nowhere to sell the power, unless something changed with the access to market. Ross, I appreciate the time. Anything else before we have to say goodbye?
No, that's all, Paddy. That was just something I wanted to put out, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Take good care.
Take good care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye. All right. Let's try to get to the breaks on time today for a change. When we come back, we do indeed have some people running for various levels of office. Jim also wants to talk about Beta Nord, and then whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. So we're to one of the candidates running for a councillor at-large position here in the city of St. John's. It's Walter Harding. Walter, you're on the air.
Very good morning to you, Paddy. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
No problem.
I won't keep you long, and I just wanted to take 2 seconds before I had a little chat with you to send on my sincere condolences to the family and the friends and the colleagues of Mr. Clifton Edward Halliday. Halliday's meat market. He passed last week at the age of 91. And Mr. Halliday and the whole Halliday family, you really need to look at the little guest book that's in their shop to see just what that store means to so many people from all over the world. I don't know if you've had a chance to ever go down to Halliday's, but it's like going back in time, and it's just it's a little bit different because Mr. Halliday would always be there, of course, and overlooking everything, with Kip and Chris and Johnny and Gary doing their thing. So I just wanted to pass on. I didn't know if everybody had heard or not, but he's working at Carnell's, and his funeral will be on Thursday.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say I knew Cliff very well, nor do I know all the boys very well, but I've certainly shopped at Halliday's, of course. I think most people in town have probably had at one point or another. And my condolences to his family.
Yes, for sure. They would do everything by weight, so it's not that they're the batches of everything. That was Mr. Halliday's recipes from many years ago. And I just wanted to pass on my condolences, and I thank you for allowing me to do that. And just for 60 seconds, Paddy, yes, I am a very excited and humble candidate here in the city of St. John's for an at-large seat. I did want businesses and residents to know that after 40 years of working and getting up at 1 in the morning and getting ready for 2 and being on the road, my eyes still pop open at 1. There's no way. I'm programmed to be like that now. So it's an opportunity for me to put full-time hours into the at-large position. So I can't see me being any later than 3:30 or 4 in the morning to get at my office and answer emails and correspondence and make some home visits. I'd really love to get into the schools for our school-age children. While I can't teach civic pride, I sure would like to explain to the children the benefits of loving where you live and having pride in your community. And I just wanted folks to know that even though it's considered a part-time job, I will be doing it on a full-time basis, and nobody will ever have to look very far to find me.
Yeah, and that's a good thing. And access to our elected officials is very problematic for many because, once people get, and this is more about provincial politics, once people get in office, they become a little bit harder to contact than what they told us at the door. So I get it. Walter, anything else you want to offer this morning?
Very quickly, when I ran in 2021, one of the most disappointing things about not being successful was I met with the St. John's Regional Firefighters Association back then. What was supposed to be a half-an-hour meeting turned into almost 3.5 hours, and I left that meeting with such a a renewed and strong respect for all the firefighters. And when I wasn't successful, I was really disappointed. I wouldn't be a nice go-between, an open line, a wide open line of communication between our wonderful firefighters and our council. And when I went with them 2 weeks ago, they are, they're getting lots of support, but they do appreciate very much just that open line of communication, once or twice a week to say hello, and your training and equipment and vehicles and bunker gear, and the time off between shifts. Just make sure that everything continues to roll along, because as we're running out, they're running in, and they always have our backs, Paddy.
Absolutely right. And of course, a bit more of a keen focus on firefighters given the extremely active and devastating wildfire season we just got through, and hopefully that's the end of it. And we can't let that go by the wayside either. I cannot tell you how many stories I've heard from folks, specifically in the CBN area, about the loss and the concerns with insurance coverage and the timeliness of provincial support and the timeliness of access to the Federal Disaster Relief Fund. People are hurting bad. You can only imagine. It's one thing to lose everything you have, but quite another to talk about the rebuild and whether or not what's been pledged by different levels of government actually comes to pass. There's a lot to it, and we should keep those stories out there. I appreciate your time, Walter, and I wish you good luck.
Thank you so much. Anybody wants to get me, I'm on Facebook, Walter Harding, and just a little website, walterharding.com. I sincerely appreciate your time, Barry. Thank you.
I appreciate yours. Good luck.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Walter Harding running for an at-large position, councillor at-large. Let's see here. Let's go to line number 7. Taking more to the President, Chief Steward at QP Local 1615. That's Bill Kavanagh. Bill, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy Daly. How are you?
Great today. How about you?
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I wanted to appreciate you making the time. I wanted to let your listening audience know about what we think is a very important leaders election town hall on post-secondary education this coming Wednesday. 6:30, the doors open for a 7 o'clock start. CBC's Adam Walsh has agreed to moderate. It's being hosted by the Coalition of Unions. I'm the president of QP 1615, but we're part of a coalition of all of the labour unions at Memorial University, as well as all of the student unions. And we started our coalition a couple of years back, realizing that some of the big changes that were coming at Memorial required a bit more of a public and group conversation. So that's part of what we're doing in this town hall during this election. We've invited all the leaders. The leader of the NDP party has agreed to come. Jim Dinn, the Minister of Education, has agreed to come as well. Not sure if the Premier was available or not, but the Minister will be there, and the PC party has agreed to send somebody as well, and we're working with them to see who they'll be sending. And so, yeah, for folks who want to find more information, there's a couple of places you can find it. One is 1615.cupe.ca. So on that website, you can see the poster for the town hall, you can RSVP, and you can even submit questions as part of our panel.
Absolutely. Are there any key focus areas? Because I know it's a collaboration between all organised labour. And I recall a press conference, months ago, that there was also representatives of the Federation of Students there. So are there specific focus areas that you're going to be asking questions on?
Well, we're working with the submission from the general public and our members in the coalition, but not to preempt too much. I suspect that there will be a focus on Memorial University itself as our public university, funding to it. Consequent changes to services and offerings for students, the labor conditions. So I think you'll see questions at least on those. But we're hoping the general public are going to submit some of their own questions, and we'll give them to our moderator, and he'll help organize. But you mean the elephant in the room, Paddy? Over the last few years, the funding to the university has been cut, and the general public, I don't think, and I'm not even sure the government is entirely familiar with what's happening at this place. Things are changing in a big way, and we think it needs to be part of the public conversation. And I should let your listening audience know as well, we do intend to take a couple of questions from the floor, maybe even remotely if possible. So it's not just going to be panel questions, it's going to be for the general public to get their 2 cents in and see what the leaders have to say.
We got to get it right in K-12, and we absolutely have to get it right in post-secondary, not just at Memorial University, but we're across the entire landscape of post-secondary institutions. Bill, I appreciate the time. Would you like to say anything else this morning?
Yeah, just the other thing, too, that the coalition really started focusing on, and we'd like to see come out in this town hall, is the importance of the special mandate of Memorial University to the people of the province. You talked, I didn't get a chance to hear your opening monologue this morning, but I heard you Friday. I mean, this place educates our doctors, our nurses, our social workers, our teachers, and we're already seeing like the medical lab assistants and difficulty attracting nurses and stuff. I mean, that's a direct result of what's happening at Memorial University as well. So it is part of the broader good, and there are over 66,000 graduates of Memorial University that work and run this province. So we really think this is not just about labor. It's not just about students. This is about the special mandate of Memorial University to the people of the province and educating people like our doctors and nurses. So that's really important thrust in this conversation, and we really do hope people are going to come out. And again, it's 6:30 this Wednesday at the Bruno Centre on St. John's campus. Moderator Adam Walsh. And if folks want to find out more and RSVP, they can go to 1615.cupe.ca.
Appreciate the time. Thanks, Bill. Good luck with it.
Before you run off, Patty,
Sure.
one last thing.
No problem.
I want to say happy birthday to Mom on Bell Island, who is celebrating her birthday today.
Happy birthday to your mother. I've met your mother several times, and I wish her the very best of the day. Thanks, Bill.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Patty. Appreciate the time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
There you go. One more thing. Happy birthday, Mom. I love that. And just reminds me, of course, of Seth Hyde during the regiment game. Mom won the 50-50. Seth's dad's not doing very well. And Seth has got a bright future in that broadcast booth, and he's a lovely young fella. Mother Jackie's also very, very sweet, so I want to wish the Hyde family nothing but the best. Okay, let's try to get to the break on time once again. What do you know? Jim wants to talk about Beta North, and there's a couple of candidates there. Then we're talking about whatever you want to talk about. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 3. Jim, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thank you for taking my call this morning. Your program is very interesting as I listen there while I'm waiting to go on. Patty, what I wanted to talk about was the Beta North project and how that's evolving with none of the work being done here locally. And that is, in my humble opinion, a travesty. To say that as a government, or the elected government that we have in place, they cannot negotiate some reasonable benefits here for the workers of this province, well, it knocks my socks off. It's not acceptable in my world. I'm very familiar with it. I worked in the construction industry in Newfoundland for all my working life. I was a pipe fitter, worked at construction all over the country, and when I could, home here in this province, right? And Bob Flyander with the Trade NL has been on recently talking about, look at the benefits that this work that the various facilities have brought to this province. And that's so true. It makes people do well when you put them to work. How you got to beat somebody over the head with that, I just don't understand. If you put people to work, they do well. If you don't, they struggle. I mean, who cannot grab that concept, right? Anyway, going back from Bob Flyander's point of view, when he listed the benefits, but something maybe he didn't dwell on enough. The government has done pretty well on it too. When I went out at those projects here locally and I worked, man, when I looked at my check, the government damn well took its share of money. And I'm saying, what are they doing with it? It's more than about making pensions for the bureaucrats. You know, they've got a job to do. And right now, with what they put on the table here recently, is just terrible. So I can go back to history with the Atlantic Accord in Hibernia. I'm very familiar with it. I watched every second of it because it affected my livelihood. I needed to work. I wanted to be home with my family and do all the good things that work brings you, right? And with Peckford and that crew at the time, at least they were willing to do the battle, and they put some things in place. Well, over time, that has just deteriorated, and our politicians and self-serving bureaucrats have let it deteriorate. And once again, in my humble opinion, is not acceptable. To say that they cannot carve out some of that work from the FPSO that's going to be done for Beta North is ludicrous. They can do it if they want to do it. So what are they trading off? So they're trading off I speak as a worker here in this province, my well-being, so they get a few royalties to do what they want to do with. The best thing that they can do with that project, Patty, and I'll say it as loud as I possibly can, is put people to work. All the benefits that comes from doing that they're just gigantic for the government, for the community, and for the individual workers. You know, they're proud. They're doing a good job. You can say, look back, I had a hand in building this. And what is wrong with that? And we cannot seem to get our bureaucrats on that page. They're willing to sell us down the drain. Well, in my world, they should be tarred and feathered and threw over the wharf. That's my humble opinion. Once again, and I'm frustrated, Paddy, as you can hear with my voice, because this is not the first go-round, it's not the second go-round, not the third go-round. And the problem being, we're going down the scale. Instead of trying to honor the intentions of the Atlantic Accord, which come with a battle. And thank God we had people like Brian Peckford and John Crosby there who were willing to say, we're putting it on the table or it's not going to go. And they had some success with that. And now to say that they're going to give us the subsea work. The subsea work goes on a regular basis with those projects, if anybody knows. That's not even. A while back they were talking about the anchor chains and including that in the tonnage and things like that of the work, which is, anybody who knows anything knows it's a joke. So once again, maybe, Paddy, maybe, and I may sound a bit long-winded, maybe we got the wrong people sitting at the table. Maybe we need to look at who is doing these bargaining, who is selling what down the drain. And I'm sick and tired as a worker in this province to be sold down the drain when it's a project. Look at Hibernia. Look at Hibernia, Paddy. Probably the best project, and it could be arguably because I don't know all the economics of it. But look at Hibernia and what is brought to this province, what is brought to the government, what is brought to the federal government. Who in their right mind would say at this point, we shouldn't have built something in Newfoundland, they couldn't do it efficiently or nonsense like that, right? These projects, the resource carries the projects, Paddy. If the resource didn't have value, we wouldn't be talking about it. So let the workers of the province, for heaven's sakes, have some benefit. Now, we're into an election, and man, I don't hear too many of the wannabe politicians or the people who are hoping to get elected and are there now saying we are going to support putting Newfoundland to work. Matter of fact, I think they're totally silent on it. So I give kudos, and I want to support Bob Fyander in trying to get this story out that we want the work. Work works for everybody. There's no one loses in the work. And we'll take all the criticism, we can't do it efficiently and all that. I don't care about that stuff. The resource carries that. Put our people to work, Paddy. I asked you a question. Do you see anything wrong with that?
No. Short answer. So, money's flowing to provincial government coffers is a good thing, but it's not as good as money flowing to people's pocketbooks.
Absolutely.
That's the ultimate benefit of any of these types of projects. And we're not talking about creating jobs for the sake of. It's not a make-work project. If there's work that needs to be done, every little bit of it that we can do here should be done here. Now, in fairness, we're only taking Equinor's position here because we don't even know what negotiations even look like at this moment in time. We don't know if there's any pushback come from the government if and when they actually greenlight this project. So we're kind of operating with a few hypotheticals here. Equinor hasn't even said they're going to proceed yet.
There, Paddy. If they were having a kick, we'd be hearing about it.
If we were having what, sorry?
If they were kicking back at what was being put on the table, like that the work is going to go out of province, they're going to do it elsewhere. And just on the history of that, we're talking to Equinor. Well, Equinor being a Norwegian company, and I assume they have Norwegians working with them. When the North Sea started, Paddy, Norway was not the same as we are, but similar. The North Sea is much bigger, but they had a bunch of international companies coming into Norway and other places and saying, we're going to do what we're going to do. Well, the Norwegian government said, hold on, boys, we got issues here for the local people. And look where they are today because they took their stand. They're probably the richest country in the world on a per capita basis, right? And they got funds that they can rely on for 100 years going into the future. Well, that's what I want for Newfoundland. Yeah. And we cannot get that if we don't stand up for the people. And the first, once again, Paddy, in my opinion, nothing trumps, nothing, I don't care what it is, Trump's putting Newfoundland people to work. And
I get it.
Also.
My point, Jim, is that we don't even know if this is ever going to happen. So that's kind of what I was getting at is I don't even know what level of negotiations have happened because Equinor still hasn't said that they're going to proceed as of yet.
Yeah.
They've doing some...
fair enough. I understand that. Yes, they can say we're not going to do the investment. Fair enough. But in the interim, you don't say we don't want anything come from the project for the people. as a starter, we want to put people to work. Now, we don't have the capacity to build the whole project, no question, but we do have the capacity to have significant input, and that's what I want, and I'm sure that's what Bob Fyander would trade. And once again, Paddy, I cannot believe at this point, after the start of Hibernia today, that we're still not sure we're going to put Newfoundlanders to work. And man, boy, I think we've just gone off track with it. And the people who are representing us are not doing the job they're there to do. And I'll say that right to their face if I had the chance. They're not doing their job, period. And our politicians have come up short also, but they change over a regular basis. It's the bureaucrat behind the scenes who's making decisions that are not where they need to be, in my opinion.
I appreciate your time and opinion, Jim. Thanks for calling.
Okay, I appreciate one more thing before you go, Paddy, because the MOU with Hydro is on, with Quebec and all that. And once again, I'm 71 years old, Paddy, or I will be in my birthday. So I'm involved with all that stuff. And my life here in Newfoundland was lesser because of that agreement. Here's what I would suggest as a simple thing. There's so much confusion about that. Out in Alberta, with the issue they're talking about separation and that, and I don't know how real that stuff is, but it's important to the people out there. So they took that discussion around to all the major centres in the province, had people's input, explain this, explain that. That's what I suggest that the Hydro people do with this MOU. Go to let's say if you're a community of 5,000 people in Newfoundland, go to that community, have a town hall. Let's have the discussion so we can get it fully discussed, because the point I am concerned, like when they announced that there was an escalating clause in it, I thought, man, that's good. That takes away what happened for the last 35 or whatever it is years. But I heard also that that's not the case. There's a cap on the escalation cost. Let's get those things put on the table. But, Paddy, the purpose of my call this morning is just to support Bob Fyander, Trade NL, and the people who are trying to get Newfoundland people to work and Labrador people to work also. That's so crucial. There's nobody can do anything better than that.
Appreciate the time. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Paddy.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. One more before we get to the news. Let's go to line number 4. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Paddy. Good morning.
Morning.
I just had something to point out regarding the website and the signage at Robin Hood Bay. For a long time, it's been saying that they're open on Saturdays till noon, and the signage outside says from Tuesday to Saturday from 8 to 4. I scrambled on Saturday to get there by noon, and come to find out that they're open till 4.
Yep.
The website really needs to be updated.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised because that's a kind of a silly mistake to make, because anyone who's ever gone to the dump knows it's up until 4 o'clock.
Yeah, really. And I've been there before, but just happened that this Saturday, for some reason, I checked the website before I headed to go there, and it was like, seriously, why did I even rush to get here? There was no point. The website needs to be updated, and I tried calling the city to get through, and there are just so many prompts to get to a live person. I just said, forget about it. I'll just mention it to Patty on Monday.
I'm glad you did. So someone listening at the City of St. John's today who's part of maintaining or updating the website, that's a simple one. You should be able to get that done before we come back from the newscast. So update the website so people know exactly what the operating hours are. Pretty fundamental stuff.
Absolutely. Thanks, Patty.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I mean, that's a simple one, right? Well, if it was an oversight, fair ball, that could be corrected. And like I mentioned, that could probably be done before we come back to speak with you after the newscast. Don't go away. Okay, back to the show. Let's go. Line number 4. Say good morning to Art Pollester, running for Councillor at Large here in the City of St. John's. Art, you're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Paddy. Thank you for taking my call.
Happy to do it.
On Friday, I heard Bianca Lona on the open line talking about tax for the city of St. John's and the province that were dealt with, and I couldn't agree with her more. There's a number of points about taxation regarding the city and the province. First of all, the city has a budget of $449 million, and we have a payroll of about $250 million. Now, the city has to pay a payroll tax to the province of 2%, anything over $2 million. The payroll tax was instituted by Clyde Wells to tackle payrolls. So we pay $250 million. 2% of that is $5 million. So the payroll tax, as far as I'm concerned, should be rebated to the city and Mount Pearl, Gander, Grand Falls. Anybody who's got a payroll over $2 million should get rebates from the province. That's very unfair. That's the first point about taxes. And the second point I want to talk about taxes is the fuel for Metrobus. Not many people realize, but the city of St. John's can buy its diesel fuel for snowblowers and garbage trucks cheaper than, say, for Metrobus, because the province targets public transportation at St. John's and Corner Brook. Metrobus pays about $450,000 to $500,000 a year on a special road tax for Metrobus. Now, that should be rebated as far as I'm concerned, right?
Yeah, and rebated by who? By the province?
By the province, yes. I mean, does it make sense that we pay a cheaper price for diesel for snowblowers and garbage trucks than for Metrobus? I mean, it's a tax on public transportation, and it targets St. John's and Corner Brook only. It's a road tax.
Fair enough. And, it's interesting that you bring up public transportation and Metrobus. We were having a conversation about public transportation just yesterday, just with my pals. So, when Metrobus a decreased transfer from the city for operations, I viewed it as a good thing. Some others thought it was a bad thing. But if they're becoming more self-sustainable, that's excellent. And if you add in that rebate that you're referring to, that would make things even rosier for the operations. Plus, we've seen an uptick in users on Metrobus. There's a variety of reasons, whether it be the provincial coverage for people on income support and otherwise, whether it be newcomers using Metrobus. But we've got to get away from the whole concept of public transportation is for losers, the loser cruiser. Man, if you go to any other capital city or any other city that uses public transportation in the rest of the country, it's used by a lot of people. You can have someone who's on income support sitting alongside someone with a $5,000 suit on because it's convenient. Now, there's work to be done here for Metrobus to be more convenient with fast-track routes, maybe upgrading some bus shelters and what have you. But boy, oh boy, it's good to see Metrobus needing less city money to operate.
Yes, that's true. But if we had that $500,000 back from the province,
agreed.
Right now, just talking about we're using less buses now than we did 20 years ago. The last point I want to talk about, Patty, is the water and sewer service. Like the way the water and sewer works with the city. I mean, all the government buildings, the university, Kona, the hospitals, every government building gets free water and sewer from the city of St. John's. They do not pay anything for that service. Now, in 2001, the province paid the city of St. John's a grant of $10 million, which got eliminated around that time. So they don't pay their share of tax. Now, having said that, the province has been good to the city over the years for capital projects. Like they did a 1/3 upgrade for the Riverhead sewer system. They did 1/3 for upgrades to Bay Woods Big Pond. So capital projects, the province is there. But on the day-to-day things, they're not. So I would call upon the province and Mr. Hogan and Mr. Wakeham to sit down with the city. I mean, after the election is over, and start negotiating with the city to pay the city for these services, because that's a burden by the municipal taxpayer. And they can easily do that by reinstating grants in lieu of taxes, not just for us, but probably other municipalities as well.
At the Riverhead Treatment Centre or facility, it's also important to note that when costs went overboard there, or that's not the right way to put it, when the cost increased, there was some significant negotiations, I'll call it, to ensure that the other funding partners did their part insofar as percentage-wise goes, because that was a bit of a racket at the time.
Yes, it was. And it was great to be able to see, all levels of government coming together, the federal government, the province, and the city. Yeah. They did, such a major project, because, there's no way the city could handle that thing on their own. Patty, a couple of final things I want to mention, that the ballots, I've been doing a lot of door-to-door, and seniors have some difficulty with the ballots. The way they're printed, the oval, the little circle to the right of the name is there. Unfortunately, it's not as pronounced as it should be. First, when I opened my ballot, I looked up, my God, and I started to read it. You had to fill in the little circle. Now, if you really look clearly and you turn on the light, yes, you can see it there, but it needs to be more pronounced. So, and I believe the city has been made aware of this, and they're telling seniors that, look, if you want to come on voting day, we'll help you with your ballot and so on, right? But right now, the city needs to be able to get on top of this and address the issue of that ballot, right?
Yeah, fair enough. And on this front, on the ballots, and the city says they're not going to have to reprint and mail ballots, which I guess that's a timing issue. But if you are successful, I hope that you and whoever forms the next council from the mayor on down will do something to update the voter list. How many stories have I got where people go to the mailbox, there's 2 people living in the house, there's 7 ballots in the mailbox? Past owners, kids who have moved out. I mean, we have got to ensure integrity of the elections by making sure the voter list is updated as best possible. Now, that requires some of us who have changed address and kids have moved out to be part of the solution. But this cannot be the case. We cannot open up the door for voter fraud here because the city's voter list isn't updated.
Paddy, I can give you a better one than that. I mean, you're right. I mean, what the city does, they just take the provincial voters list and use it. But I've had people say to me, Mr. Poster, this funny thing about the city, they can't get me on the voters list, but every 6 months they can find me to send me my tax bill. How is it they find me with sending my taxes every year? They don't miss that. But I've been living here for 10 years and I can't even get a ballot. I mean, how do you answer that?
You can't. It's just not good enough. I mean, people send me these emails with photos attached. Husband and wife are the only 2 living in the house, 7 ballots in the box. I mean, it's just not good enough.
Yeah.
Appreciate the time.
Finally, I'd like to join Walter Harding, extending my condolences to the Halliday family. I've known Cliff over the years. It's been great to drop down there on a Saturday morning, buy your puddings, whatever you want to buy, and have a little chat. It reminds you of the old days back in the 60s when you go to the corner store, and it was sort of more of an experience than going out on a shopping spree,
Fair ball. Appreciate the time. Good luck, Art.
Yeah, thanks a million.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Art Pottis running at large. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the Liberal candidate out in Terra Nova. That's Greg French. Greg, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy.
Welcome to the program.
Thank you. So, I'm calling today now. I'll let you go ahead there, Paddy.
I'll start by saying, I don't know if surprised is the right word, but given your thoughts on Crown Lands and the current government's handling of it, to now be the Liberal candidate, I'll say surprised, and that's not meant to be anything negative. It's just that, how do you make that type of decision when you've been speaking about Crown Lands the way you have over the last number of years?
Well, I suppose the way to look at it is that I could spend the next 4 years on the sidelines, or I could actually get into the game and try and make a difference directly. Now that we've had a change of leadership, John Hogan, as lawyer, of course, have known him in practice, and I have utmost confidence in him. And when this discussion came up, certainly I was interested in having the opportunity to actually make some corrections and try and guide the ship. It's a lot easier to do that from the inside than the outside. And certainly I think on Friday, a public announcement that we are going to be making reforms to Crown Lands certainly met my requirements for doing it right.
Okay, and what exactly was involved in the announcement? Because it's easy to say, which the government has been saying, is that we're going to modernise the system, make it easier, more straightforward, to understand exactly what is and what is not Crown Land. Give us some specifics as to what proposed changes are coming, if and when the Liberals are successful.
Well, the platform has 2 aspects, and the first one is reconciliation of lawyer-certified title. Now, this is where we run into senior citizens who were losing their homes, or certainly being threatened with losing their homes because of non-compliance with the Lands Act. Essentially, what we have here is if lawyers are certifying the title, if it meets Law Society standards of good title, then Crown Lands should not be an impediment. You should simply be able to file a certificate from the lawyer saying this complies with Law Society requirements and have it accepted on its face. That's what's happening right now today with real estate in this province. That's how it's going through on a daily basis, except in the current form, Crown Lands is nowhere involved in the process and has no idea what's being certified day to day. So aspect 1 of this is to stop that, allow it to go forward with the same efficiency, but simply bringing Crown Lands into the fold. That way we can reconcile the records in the Registry of Deeds with the Crown Lands Registry. And that's an important aspect for future development and for certainty of title, so that we're not going to run into situations anymore where your lawyer said the title was good, then you go to sell and another lawyer says your title's no good, and you wind up in a Crown Lands dispute like so many people in this province. So that's the first one. The second one is what I would call a normalization, which is a reconciliation with reality, which is to say you have a legitimate claim. You've been paying your taxes. You've occupied it for years. The townspeople agree that this is yours. You have your affidavits. you have records showing the ownership, that it might not perfectly fit with the requirements under the Lands Act right now, but the Crown will no longer be an impediment. And again, as long as there's an objective standard, so that this isn't some big corporate giveaway, that's I've seen some people comment online that, oh, this is more land for your buddies. That's not what this is at all. At all. This is meant to confirm what people already have and make the Crown lands records reflective of reality.
It's been such a unnecessary tangle for all these years. Is part of the plan also to, merge both offices that deal with Crown lands into one standalone entity? Because we're unlike any other province in the country with the way we handle Crown lands with two different departments.
Well, we have, it's two different departments because it's two different issues, because Crown Lands only keeps track of whether or not something is Crown land. And that's where we have the biggest problem, because their records don't reflect what people are occupying and what land is people say they own and what they're building on, and that's where the problems are coming up. The only goal of the Crown Lands Registry is just to keep track of what land still belongs to the province. The Registry of Deeds is any private transaction. Like, Paddy, if I sell you my house, the deed for that is going into the Registry of Deeds. Crown Lands has the record from when my house was a farm in the 1900s. That's the extent to which Crown Land cares. Like, once it is out of the Crown's hands, what happens to it after that is a matter between the community and other people in it.
But in the past, I think you've agreed with the fact that there needn't be two separate offices, even though, yes, I understand that there's a different role for. But if the other provinces can do it and maybe streamline it, and in the effort to find, for instance, efficiencies in government, to identify redundancies in government, maybe this is one exercise where we can achieve some savings. No?
It may be so. It's really just a question right now of how we get the Crown Lands problem solved, and the future merging of the registry, certainly, that's a matter for consideration, but it is important to remember that the Crown Lands Registry exists so that if you go out and want to buy a piece of land, the Crown can say, yes, we can sell you this land because it doesn't belong to anybody else. Right now, I'm going to go so far as to say we do not have that capacity, simply because of all the squatters' rights claims that have never been reconciled. Like, to be clear, it wouldn't be the job of Crown Lands to keep track of, Paddy Daly buying Greg French's house and every subsequent mortgage and deed and all that. That is a separate matter altogether. It's really just someone needs to keep track of current Crown inventory, and someone needs to keep track of who owns it right now. And right now, that goes through the Department of Municipal Affairs, because they do the tax rolls. It goes through the Department of Government Services, which does the Registry of Deeds. And Crown inventory is a question for Crown Lands. So call it a step along the process here. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, of course, but, journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Right, and insofar as having different roles, I get that, but even if we talk about the behemoth that is the Department of Health Community Services, there's people that do different things: operations, HR, procurement. So it's still possible to have things under one roof and under the authority of one deputy minister, for instance, and that's probably not the right choice of position. But give us a specific issue in Terranova that we could dig into for a couple of minutes before we let you go.
Sure. Well, I spent my weekend up in Glovertown, and I've certainly heard a lot of issues up there. One in particular has to do with water treatment, and this is a recurring issue in a lot of communities. I mean, we have communities all over the island that have boil water advisories, and some have had them for decades. This gets into, I suppose, how we can better resource the needs of municipalities. Water treatment is a big one, because if you don't have water in your house, or drinkable water in your house, you certainly do have a serious problem. One thing that has crossed my mind on that is, what we can look at in terms of provincial municipal cooperation, perhaps even regional cooperation, to try and staff some of these unstaffed issues, such as the availability of people to go out and treat municipal water and monitor municipal water. It's hard for small communities to do this individually, but together, and perhaps in a centralized way, there is a way for us to share the cost across people, and everybody can be better off for it.
Yeah, that issue is so complex because every municipality that's been on a boil water advisory for some communities for decades, and in other communities they don't have the infrastructure. In other communities they've overbuilt the infrastructure. No one knows how to maintain it and or to operate it. So it's pretty interesting stuff. And not every reservoir is created equal either. So getting into the weeds of potable water is a very distinctly different conversation community to community. That's why it's such a tangle.
That's right. And I mean, it's true of pretty much every government problem you can identify, that there's very rarely a one-size-fits-all solution. And at the provincial level, certainly everything has to be done in kind of a blunt way, simply because every community has its own unique situation. So any one-size-fits-all coming out of St. John's solution is going to be necessarily limited to a degree, but when you get into each individual circumstance, it's really just having people on the ground who can explain, here's what community A needs, here's what community B needs. And you're right, certainly there is no silver bullet to all of it, but it's a step in the right direction if we can at least start identifying the problems and putting people to the task.
Although I guess if we are talking about silver bullets or a one-size-fits-all, it's basically going to boil back to money. It just is.
Exactly.
I mean, municipalities simply don't have that kind of money, even if we talk about the new cost-sharing model that's been brought to bear. And I think there's an argument to be made when the cost-sharing model changed, it made things even more difficult. But that's for another day. Greg, I always appreciate you making time for the program. I wish you good luck.
Thank you, Paddy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. All right, Dave will tell me who's next when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to Brenda Halley, running in the ward number 2 here in the city of St. John's. Brenda, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
Patty, I wanted to phone in to talk about housing, and I know that people have been phoning in. Last week you had a fantastic show.
Brenda, can you pick up the receiver so I can hear you a little bit more clearly, please?
Yeah. Sorry, that's my hands-free. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So, thanks. So we've had people calling in about our housing shortage. I'm going to call it shortage. It's hard to talk about a housing shortage, right, without sort of mentioning affordability, which leads into safety. So one thing sort of evolves into another, There's so many folks without housing. We know that we have to build more affordable housing. We know that we need more public housing. We know that we need more housing for seniors in particular, and, building up and not out and all these things. What I wanted to mention in particular were Airbnbs this morning. And people, as I'm campaigning from door to door and in particular areas of downtown especially, I guess, people have said that they've lost their communities to Airbnbs, and I think that, and I'm wondering why, I don't know, but why there wasn't a cap from the city put on Airbnbs or the number of them. And I know that they're, someone called in, Patty, I can't remember, about 2 weeks ago to your show talking about Airbnbs. And if they are capped adequately, because it would be very lucrative for the city to, have those taxes, of course. But, there's different models, Patty, that we use. I know in Ottawa and London, they have a model called auxiliary units, where people still continue to live in their homes, but they Airbnb a certain section of the home. And that seems to be working really well. At least people continue to know their neighbors. We don't lose communities that way. I spoke to a gentleman in the Battery in particular, and he told me that living 60 years in the Battery, he knew 4 people. Now some have passed away, I'm sure, but mostly the Battery has become Airbnbs. It's the place that everybody wants to stay. It's the gateway of our tourists coming in through the Narrows. They're on boats or whatever. So it's beautiful there. So I just thought I'd sort of throw that out. And Patty, I don't know if you can remember who called in your show about 2 weeks ago talking about Airbnbs. Was one of the candidates?
No, it was just one of the residents. The suggestion was that we can tell Airbnb operators are no longer allowed to operate in Airbnb, which is, a step too far in my personal opinion. And then there's also the need for the city to work with the province on things like short-term rentals, because a lot of the authority does belong in the hands of the provincial government. Now, a cap on Airbnbs is not a bad idea. I mean, we've got a rental problem here. And, if people who are landlords have had problems with tenants, and it can really be a bloody nightmare as a landlord. Not everyone has a great tenant. And if they decide that, becoming a short-term rental works best for me and my family, I think that's okay. And Airbnb is always going to be the mix inside the hospitality sector offerings, but a cap is not an idea that's not worth exploring. I think it's a reasonable conversation to have.
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, as I was going around, especially, of course, the Battery, Bond Street, Gower, door to door, having great conversations with people, it was almost like every second house was an Airbnb. So you can understand why people say, geez, Brad, we think, we've lost our communities. We don't know anybody anymore. The other thing is, I think the mayor was on last week, Danny Breen, and spoke about, the province the city has requested from the province an updated legislation. And I think it's been like 4 years. So I wonder, what is the problem? Why isn't that has come to fruition already? We need an updated legislation to input our policy. And how hard can this be? Why are we waiting so long?
It's a fair question. There's been some studies done, even here locally, between some of the folks who own multiple Airbnbs and their impact on the rental market. I read one of these things quite a long time ago. It wasn't maybe the huge impact that folks think, but things have changed, especially the population. So when the population grows and the rental market does not, what do you think is going to happen? Vacancy rates contract, and we're somewhere around 1% here, and then that doesn't even speak to the affordability issue. So, and affordability in rent can only be a conversation held with rent control. Whether or not people think that's a good idea, caps on Airbnb is legislative. Rent control and access to affordability is a bit of a different conversation. They maybe belong inside the same debate, but there's kind of two different issues. But rent control is something that I think people are loath to talk about. Why? I'm not really sure.
Patty, before I go, I wanted to talk about the voters list. I was canvassing in the downtown area again this weekend, and in one of the boxes, there were four different people in the mailbox with their ballots from the city. So I don't know how that's going to look at all. And the lady who answered the door said, I've been here 6 years, so I don't know why these keep coming to me. The other thing I wanted to say before I go, and then I won't keep you any longer, is that while I was canvassing down in the Livingstone area this weekend, there was an empty, what seemed to be beautiful unit to me. And the neighbors have told me that it's been empty since April. And it boggles me because with the housing shortage and crisis, if you will, that could fit a family. It was a 2-story house. So I don't know if there's an issue with people to do the work with the city or Newfoundland and Labrador Housing. I think it was a city-owned house. It looked beautiful. And it's been empty since April. I just want to throw that out because I think there are probably more empty housing opportunities than we're talking about. And so that's another thing that we can address, because I think we have to uncover every opportunity to put someone in a house and have a bed under their head.
I appreciate the time, Brenda. Thanks for doing it, and good luck.
Thanks, Patty.
You're welcome.
Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye. Brenda Halley, running the Ward 2. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Just before we get to the phones, so a caller talking about what she considered misinformation on the City of St. John's website about hours of operation at the dump. I think we might just have a little misunderstanding or a misread of the site, because as someone pointed out and sent me the webpage, because I wasn't looking at it when I was speaking with that lady, is that hour of operations for commercial drop-off do indeed end at noon. So for residential drop-off, it continues until 4 o'clock. Okay, let's keep going here. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Charlie. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How was the doggy, the puppy coming along?
Wonderful. Sweet little boy.
Okay. Patty, just a few things there quickly. The CBC cross-country checkup, they were asking people how they're coping with big grocery bills and so on. I like what several people had to say there as reported. One guy said in Calgary, get rid of your grass. And he said a $3 pack of seeds will get you a $50 grocery bag, right? And I've mentioned earlier about other shows about the community gardens, but I think we have to go beyond that, getting councils to get people who are interested to get their gardens dug up so they can grow their own food. I don't know if anybody's took us up on that or not, but just a quick comment on that.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody would like to have a garden that they tend to, but obviously if you're talking about grocery bills and some of that can be satisfied with a backyard or home garden, raised bed or otherwise, yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity there. We actually have a community garden in the park behind our house that the neighbours, we all chip in on effort with watering and the like, and that's been fantastic.
Yeah. Just a quick comment on the MOU. Sure. I agree with you on the referendum. I think that's a bad idea. The latest example of that would be Brexit. It's really hurt the English people, the nation. And I would say that if the escalator clause, if that was firmed up, it seems to me there should be language there, because there seems to be two schools of thought that we don't have an escalator clause or that we do. So I guess it's the language that needs to be stiffened up there, and I think a lot of people would probably vote for it if we were sure that the prices we would benefit from the prices going up, you know?
The short answer is there is what would people refer to as an escalator clause. The problem that's being articulated by some is that it does not necessarily reflect. Now, the final formula for these escalators has not been hashed out yet, so we're not entirely sure what we're actually debating here at the moment, which is where a different type of debate or discussion or discourse about it will be when there's a contract to consider, because there's still plenty of stuff that's not fully figured out. The problem people have is whether or not there's enough room inside the MOU and or definitive agreements to reflect the elasticity that the market will experience inevitably over the course of 50, 60 years. Now, if you hear from Hydro, they'll say there's a lot of things baked in based on reflecting the market in Quebec and for some of the markets they will serve with power that may indeed come from Gull or the expansion at the upper. But what that really means in dollars and cents, I don't think I fully understand it, which is why there's a lot of to and fro and or discussion to be had about things like price, cost, and value, which are price and cost are pretty much the same thing, but value isn't. And can that be reflected into this? It has to be. And secondly, and last one for me on this one, is we cannot be handcuffed by just what's inside the pages of the MOU. And that's probably not the case anyway inside these negotiations. But to look 50, 60 years down the road, if we don't include market fluctuations, then that's pretty idiotic. If we don't include what happens when and if the federal government is in the business of financially supporting Quebec and expanding transmission, because this is about who gets what, and that's where value comes into it. If we don't consider access to markets and things like East-West Energy Corridor, then we're missing a pretty important point. It may never come to pass, but that doesn't mean it's not worth the while to have translated into legalese in a contract.
So we really need to be down the road further before we can make proper judgments on this, I would say. And again, this is where we would need, when this is firmed up, this is where we would need an independent panel and let them give a Coles notes to the public and probably then a referendum. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
If we, let's say, for instance, for those on the pro side, address specific concerns being voiced by those who are opposed to it. And for those opposed, deal specifically with what Jennifer Williams or John Hogan or Andrew Fuhr or anyone else has said. Because we're kind of just yelling over the top of each other here. Not a whole lot of specific reference to Miss Williams says this, here's my interpretation. Or Danny Williams says that, and here's Jennifer Williams' interpretation. We're not really doing that. We're just saying this is bad, and other people are saying this is good. There's probably a few more details associated with good and bad that I think would be careful. Now, I did admit off the top that I have a very detailed response here from Mike Wilson, who of course left the three-person oversight panel. I'm going to say it's 20 pages long and there's a lot into it, so that's my reading for this afternoon, is to really dig into what he has to say so we can help break it down as per his perspective.
Okay, thanks for keeping this out front there. Last comment, you mentioned Danny. He was on your show there, and I liked some of his points regarding the MOU. But then he went on to say that the muskrat wasn't perfect, and I thought that was from the theater of the absurd. If the things that happened since that contract going from 6 billion to 13 or 14 billion, and the lack of reliability, and Holyrood not closing, coal-fired plants still operating in Nova Scotia. If you had all these things, there's no way Danny or anybody would have gone ahead with that project. So to use the words "it's less than perfect, but it's still a good project" is to me from the theatre of the absurd completely, because the debt load that's giving this province, that money could be spent on healthcare, education, and so on. I think it's around 6 or 700 million per year, is it not?
Say the last number again.
600 or 700 million per year we're paying to keep that going and to keep costs down.
Yeah, $6 billion between now and the end of 2030, and at that point, and like even Denise Hanrahan, the province's auditor general, not even really sure how that works, and none of us know what's going to happen after 2030. There hasn't been any specific conversation. Now, of course, the government, the Liberals will say, if and when the MOU becomes a contract and the money on the average of $1 billion a year over the course of the next 17 years comes to pass, money from there can be used for controlling rates at Muskrat, can be used for debt and deficit. But again, if does a lot of heavy lifting there.
It's an albatross the whole way, and if he keeps talking like that, I guess he has to, but I don't know how many people would buy into that. Last comment on the absurd and the cruelty, there's from the States. Sitting in a Belgian warehouse, there's medical supplies, condoms, and other birth control devices that they're getting ready to burn rather than send it to nations in Africa that need it, on order of the Trump regime. And then you've got, hand in hand with that, a cut-off of foreign aid to these same people that would help them survive or thrive. So it looks like they're trying to protect the unborn. They've got a lot of feeling for the unborn, but when you're born, you're on your own then, buddy. And it seems like to me that they're okay with the pain and suffering that young children will go through, but the unborn is sacrosanct. I don't know if you want to make a comment on that. That is totally out to lunch, right?
Well, I mean, it's you use the theatre of the absurd. It's all performative. I mean, if things have been bought and were scheduled to be flown wherever for whatever, then why not just do it? I mean, and even when you talk about U.S. aid or USAID, it has implications in the United States too. This is not just about the quote-unquote saving money and let other nations fend for themselves. For instance, just ask a farmer. Just ask a farmer what they think. The whole issue regarding even just one simple crop being soybeans. I mean, if China was buying $14 billion of soybeans per year, and so far this year zero, I mean, that's kind of biting off the nose to spite your face. So, the headline of we're going to cut this, we're going to save this amount of money, boy, it comes with complications and implications. To not acknowledge that is kind of fundamentally stupid, right? It truly is. I mean, don't take it from me, take it from a farmer. I mean, they're speaking about it right across the nation, whether it be in Nebraska or Iowa or wherever, they're experiencing the exact same thing. Insofar as people hate socialism, you know what socialism also includes? Setting up a predicament where these farmers are going to need to get bailed out by government money. Or then the big corporate guys will just come swoop in like a bunch of vultures and buy the land after they've been, insolvent and go bankrupt and will have to sell their farm. So they're either going to subsidize it, socialism, or the late capitalism will just let the big guy swoop in and kill the little guy. Pick a lane.
Excellent points. And a last quick comment, the Pentagon reporters can no longer, they're passing this, it probably is already in effect, can no longer print articles about what goes on there unless they're government approved. Can you imagine? Anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Appreciate your time. Thanks, Charlie.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line 3. Roz, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. I'm calling about my late bill. I can't understand what's going on with it. Like, I'm paying $300 for all year round. And like I said, this year we had the hottest summer ever, so I was paying the same amount last year too, right? But the part is, this year the summer's been so hot, I haven't had my heat on from June, July, August, and even September. I hadn't had it on. And I can't understand why it's not dropping. I'm after asking the Light and Power, come in and check my meter, because I'm converting with people on the street and their bills are not as high as mine. And I just want to get my meter checked. And they're saying, well, it dropped a little bit. You know, Paddy, it's getting to the extent I'm washing my clothes by hand.
Fair enough, but
just try to save a bit of electricity.
One of the things that we need to factor in is on the 1st of July, all of our bills went up 7%.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how much electricity we use. If we use the same, then your bill would be 7% more than it was July last year.
Yeah. Like I said, it's 306 all year round. Like I said, it's only me living in the house. And I said, well, I'm showering once a day. There's people on our street that got 3 and 4 people living in their homes and their light bills are not as high as mine. It don't make sense. I just want them to check my meter and see what's going on.
Did they say they would check it? Or
I'm probably uneducated, not enough to know what's going on, but I just can't understand. Last year I could understand because I had to have heat on all year because it wasn't that warm last year. But this year my heat has been totally off. And like I said, the party is, I'm even having a shower up to the summit rather than have one home. That's at the point I'm getting to. Because I go up and exercise up to the summit, I have my shower up there instead of having one home. So what else can I do to bring it down?
I'm not really sure, and nor do I know how to speak to your own personal circumstance, but one of the concepts that's been floating around and, discussed by different political parties over the years is removing the provincial portion of HST off our electricity bills, which now all of a sudden the government said they could not do, and now all of a sudden they can do it, because that's been one of the campaign promises made. But that's only for residential users, not for commercial users, and of course they're not too pleased with that either.
Yeah. But like I said, I just don't understand. Like I said, it's one person living in the home, and like I said, I don't even bake or cook or nothing. I heat up some food. I cook once every couple of weeks, and I freeze it. So have I got to unplug my fridge and my freezer and everything to save on electricity? I don't know what to do next. Because, like I said, I even stopped having showers in the house. I go to the summit to do it. So what do you do when you're living on a fixed income and the light bill is not changing? And we had the hottest summer that we had in years. They told me my light bill came, I went around the house and unplugged everything in my home. My TV, the whole works. The only thing I can't unplug is my fridge and my stove and my freezer. I can't unplug that. But I'm after unplugging everything else. And they said, well, it went down a tiny bit. So that's all I'm asking them to do is check out my meter. If I didn't go around the street and ask other people what their light bill was like, I wouldn't be so shocked. And even one of my neighbors said to me, oh, my God, Rosalind, she got the same size house as me. And the part is, I haven't even got a computer in this home.
Yeah,
so I'm not using electricity all the time, only probably for the phone that I'm talking to on now.
Ros, are you on the equal payment plan?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, so that contributes to the issue that you're experiencing as well, because obviously our consumption, for the most part, over the course of the winter is much higher than over the course of the summer. But when we're trying to even it out for people to be on an equal payment plan, it feels like you're paying a lot and not consuming the type of energy that would constitute a $300 bill or a $400 bill. So that might be part of it as well. Anything else this morning, Ros, while we have you?
No, I'm just so confused, Patty. How else can I bring the light bill down a bit? I mean, you take it. Last year I had to use electricity for my heat all year, but this year I didn't, and it's only came down a little bit, not much. Anyway, thanks for your time, honey. I just want to see if anyone else is going through the same problem as I'm doing. I went around converted with my neighbors. Apparently, they're not.
I understand your problem and your concern, Ros. I appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
So some of the complicating factors there, of course, is the 7% increase. Now, the PUB told us that they spared us an over 10% increase, but 7%. Even just the choice for the annual adjustment there to be in the middle of the summer, it really does allow for a much different conversation. Because for many of us, unless you've got some massive air conditioning units in a big home, you're probably not using near as much energy in the summertime as you are in the wintertime. So it kind of takes the PUB and the hearings and the rate applications sort of off the radar. If the decision date was January 1st, I would imagine more people would pay attention. Why? Because their power bills are getting higher, unless you're on the equal payment plan. So that whole July 1st, that's very convenient for the utilities, very convenient for the PUB. Let's check in on the Twitter box before we get to the newscast. Or VOCM Open Line, you know what to do. Email address is openline@vocm.com. Our favourites when you join us live on air. That includes Wallace, who's running for a candidate position. Where we'll find out. Alex wants to talk about the concept of people needing to vote. Billy's got a conversation I had about a fence. And then we're going up to Labrador. Talk about one of the candidates running Happy Valley Goose Bay. And then you. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Billy, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing okay. I'm putting you on hold, see if I get a better phone line to speak with Billy. Let's try 4. Alex, you're on the air.
Very pleasant morning to yourself and Mr. Williams and all the staff.
Just one moment here. I'm going to have to see if we can clear up a couple of phone lines so we can get to them. Interesting email that I just read, and very quickly, there's a lot to it, but it's the reference we make all the time. Tourism, we make it to Iceland. Oil and gas, we make the comparison to Norway. There's a few distinct differences, though, that is an important part of the conversation. For starters, Norwegian oil companies, and the big one being Statoil at the time, the Norwegian government had a huge piece of Statoil. Tons of it. So obviously decisions about how Statoil proceeds in the North Sea has direct implications with value for the government as opposed to simply jobs and royalties, expanded tax base otherwise. Also, and importantly, the Norwegians have added enormous research and development capacity, infrastructure in the country. So it just makes the entire conversation a little bit different. And even things like the Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 trillion for the Norwegians. Again, a lot of that comes back to state ownership in the oil and gas companies themselves, and state ownership in the R&D, which is availed of by the oil and gas companies. So there's a bit of a circle there, and they've created a vastly different environment. Plus, and this is not meant to be disparaging, but the Norwegians have some of the highest rates of good health and literacy, both financial and the ability to read, write, and math, of anywhere in the world. So they've just created a vastly different set of circumstances there that makes their conversation regarding oil and gas just different from ours. Not to say that people's concerns aren't real about job creation and what have you versus simply a reliance on royalties or equity stake, but they're just kind of two different things. Let's see if we have a better line on 3 with Billy. Billy, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy. How are you this morning, sir?
Great today. Thanks. How you doing?
Not too bad. Paddy, just wanted to hop on there for a second or two. Wanted to speak about a matter that was brought before your show last week concerning a school on Bond Street by a lady who's running in Ward 2 Council, Mrs. Halley. Mrs. Halley had mentioned in your preamble there one day last week about a fence being erected around the school and taking full credit for that fence being erected around the school due to the nature of the criminal activity. Well, Paddy, I was part of that meeting at the time, and let me tell you, the people who made that happen at that time were the Neighborhood Watch, the RNC police chief, and the school board, and anybody to take full credit for that being put up, that fence being put around that whole school and secured for the kids, would be John Abbott. I was at that meeting. Mrs. Halley was at that meeting. The mayor was at it. The deputy mayor sat together. And she was just a spectator at that meeting at that time. And rudely interrupted several times and Mr. Abbott had spoke out and said, give everybody else a turn. That fence was done. Mr. Abbott is to take full credit for that fencing. she can learn to pick up her votes somewhere else. The trouble behind that school was due to the shelter behind the school. It's been on wheels for the last couple of years, and it's still on wheels. Is a direct line to the RNC and the Health Science Complex of what's going on there. It's a lot of criminal activity, a lot of drug activity. That school is a bunch of youngsters that need to be secured. And that's how that came about, Paddy.
I understand. And I mean, I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know who should deserve any more credit than anyone else, but I do know that John Abbott was one of the driving forces here. My immediate takeaway on it was, I understand trying to keep the children shielded from what was going on in that laneway. But just like everything else here, like tent cities, you can move the tents from Confederation Building to Bowring Park to Bannerman Park or wherever else. Just moving the tents around doesn't solve the homelessness issue, nor does it solve the criminal activity happening in that laneway. Now we've just got a fence so you can't see it, and they can't walk down that laneway into the school property. We're not solving anything beyond just, that one important factor of shielding the kids from what's happening there. We're not doing much about why things were happening in that laneway and what we can do about it. So that was one of my first takeaways. I don't know if you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah, well, Paddy, what's happening now, that the fence is erected around the school and they can't get around the school, and the kids are secure now. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Our young ones. They're taking it over to the park now, and now I guess they bump security up in the park, and they have the RNC with the Mountie unit, doing their job, due diligence. But it's not all about the RNC. Every time that something goes on with this shelter, as this shelter is on wheels 24/7. If you live in the area, I have family in the area, and I see what's going on there. And I became part of that meeting at that school. What happened to get this in operation. And there was a lot of people involved with this. I'm going to tell you, the city didn't do a whole lot about it. If the city were going to do a whole lot about it, they should do something about that shelter. That's the most important thing. You got individuals engaging in sex out in front on a school parking lot. We have all kinds of video surveillance that was reported. All that data went to RNC, went to school board, went to where the necessary people. But when it came to the city, they turned a blind eye to it. Yeah, and I sat at that meeting, and let me tell you, the family members at that meeting were very perturbed and upset about what was going on and tried to figure out the best solution. So that's why they put the fence around it.
Absolutely.
You're right, Paddy. These people will move to the next step. Now they're moved over to Queen's Road. There's a little park there next to the gallery place. Not fit to be inside of. Just look, they beat the bus shelters, the windows out of the bus shelters. All the bus shelters are gone. You and I, or your family members who are getting buses from A to B, have to suffer because of what's going on. I know we're in a very sad state with the homeless and everything else going on, but, someone needs to honestly step up to the plate and start doing the right thing. What the right thing is, I have no idea, Paddy.
That's because it's complicated, and people pretend it's not. So, I guess the base point for me, or a summary point, is, look, if we just think that the fence is the solution, and for protecting the children, obviously it was the first step, but if we just take that circumstance a few steps further, eventually there's going to be a fence around everything. And does that solve the problem? No. It just makes it someone else's problem.
That's right. That's what they'll do. They'll figure another way out. Like there's somebody now who is in the area now who sneaks the way down to try to cut the lock off the fences. Little do you know, we just put a sign up. This place is under surveillance. We do have to secure our young kids this day and age.
Of course we do. No doubt. And whatever it takes. God bless what's going on with the RNC. These guys are work 24/7. They're facing everything. They don't have the answers for everything. And the paramedics don't have the answers for everything. We need to clean up these shelters. We need to clean up the gathering place because it's just ferocious. You walk from St. Clair's down to Bannerman Park, and it's like looking at the zombie show, The Walking Dead. It's absolutely ludicrous. It's incredible. It's shameless. It's sad, is what it is.
Very, very sad. And look at the number of our young who are dying of overdoses and everything else that's going on. We need change, big change, Paddy, and we need the right people, put the right people in place to make changes, not people to jump off and take credit for I did this, I did that, or whatever. No, it's not about that. We need change, big time change. How we're going to get it, I have no idea. But I just wanted to give you my 2 cents worth and let you know what's going on and what I visit and what I see.
And I'm glad you did, because you were there, I wasn't. So I can't comment on something that I didn't see or hear. And I really appreciate your time, Billy. Thanks for doing it.
Thank you, Paddy, for the time.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Have a great day.
You too. Which gets me thinking about patrolling the trail networks and what have you. When the provincial government, and look, protecting the National War Memorial is important, I would suggest, and to try to keep it from being defaced and vandalised is absolutely a good idea. And what the decision was is to let a contract to a private company to the tune of $1.5 million, as opposed to be afforded the same respect and treatment with a ceremonial guard. Now, will people respect the security guards that are going to be on site? Remains to be seen. Do we think there'd be a greater level of respect and control if ceremonial guard, people in uniform, were part of monitoring what goes on at the National War Memorial? I think we deserve the same respect that the National War Memorial gets in Ottawa. I'll just throw that out there for your consideration. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 5. Alex, you're on the air.
Very pleasant morning to yourself, Mr. Williams, and all the staff.
The same to you.
Thank you. The reason for my call this morning is that, to the best of my knowledge, we have elections coming up, more than one. And over the years, I was astonished and grieved, really, by the number of times I encountered people who shared that, I don't bother to vote, or I didn't bother to vote. And it always alarmed me to hear it, but the number of times I've heard it really worries me. And it's beyond me to really understand why not. And because it's so important to every one of us, in my opinion. And I'll tell you, I'm not letting myself off the hook here, because I used to think, well, that's okay. That doesn't mean anything to me, because I do vote. I always vote. Okay, but what about all your buddies or drinking buddies or your chums in school or your workmates that did they vote? I don't think so. But I didn't bother to engage them in the conversation about it, And I don't mean go to put them down and say, oh, well, you should have voted and this is where. So, no, but I could have shared, well, I always vote and this is why. And maybe I can stimulate the idea that, yeah, maybe I will. Right? Because, and give my personal reasons for it. This is why I always vote. Because I think it's a really big deal. And it matters. And one thing, for example, I heard too often was that, you know what? Yeah, but my opinion doesn't matter. I'm only one person. There's so many people, and it's not going to matter. Well, I don't know how to change that thinking, but for example, maybe the same person, well, you were encouraged last week, you thought, yeah, there's a real big lottery going on. Look at that, buddy, I might win. But you went and bought one ticket to win a big prize. Maybe. But look at the number of people buying that ticket.
Yeah, that's right. And insofar as does your vote count, Jordan Brown beat Graham Leto by 1 vote. So there's a pretty clear example of how every vote does count. And, I get when people say there's no one worth voting for. And that opinion, I think, is pretty popular in some corners. But that doesn't change the fact that someone on that ballot is going to win. And certainly you must think that one person is a better suited candidate than another. It comes down to the fundamentals for me. And you know who is best served by apathy? Politicians. I mean, we're doing them a favor. The fewer people that vote are fewer people that politicians have to convince that they deserve their vote. So it's just wild to me. We're doing the politicians an enormous favor by being so apathetic.
I think also that, one reason I remember in the military, which I had the pleasure of enjoying, and is that I always was of the opinion that looking at other countries in the state they were in, and I thought, I always exercise my vote because it's a right that we have in this country. then I always kept thinking, looking at other countries, that, you know what, if you don't use your rights, if you don't exercise your right, at some point, they might just come to the point, the powers that be, and say, well, you're not bothering, so it obviously isn't that important to you, so we're just going to take it away from you. So, you know, if you want to keep your right to vote, use it. And I think the other point that came to my mind was that, okay, it's not just about who gets to win. Like, I'm going to vote, say, for example, I'm looking at who's going to be the next premier or the prime minister. So I'm going to vote because I want this guy to win, or this person, you know, to win. And but that's not it either, because, well, I vote because I choose a candidate who I feel best represents my point of view and what I would like to see happen. They're basically representing my thoughts and my opinion. And so, but if you do vote, then even if that particular person I was rooting for, so to speak, even if they didn't get in, right? Oh, you're not the winner, but you're still a winner because now I have somebody who I voted for who is there to represent my point of view. So they're in opposition. But no, you don't vote at all. You only got the winner and there's no opposition. What do you got now?
It's a good question. And, you know, I also dislike, on the other hand, when people say if you don't vote, you have no say. You do. I mean, voting is a right. It's not mandatory like it is in some parts of the world. Like in Australia, you have to vote or you pay a fine. I'm not suggesting we need to do that here, but I would just remind people that the fewer people vote makes it easier for politicians. And is that what we're trying to accomplish here? And, you know, people say even if there was a selection at the bottom of the ballot that said none of the above, whatever. Okay. You know, even if none of the above wins, there's still going to be someone filling that seat in council or in the legislature or in parliament. But I'm a fan of voting. I take it seriously. And I mean, I might be in the minority. Obviously I am, because we see some voter turnout numbers that are woeful. It's unbelievable, with so many opportunities to vote: advanced polls, mail-in ballots, election day proper, which is really not a very difficult task. But anyway, to each their own, I suppose, Alex. Yeah, that's true. But I certainly would like to encourage everyone to take the time to vote, and it was a polite reminder that even if they feel that, well, I don't have any way to do so, I got no way to get or something, well, if you call the person that you'd like to encourage to win, you want to root for, so to speak, you know, I believe that very frequently they'll help you get there. Fair enough. Alex, I appreciate your time here this morning. Would you like to say anything else? No, thank you very much for your time. Oh, yes, I would, actually. Okay. I think my girlfriend sitting there knows one thing for sure. She figures, I bet, Alex, if you got struck by lightning this morning, woke up in Emerge with a couple hundred people there, you'd be piping up immediately, oh, could you please change the radio station? Why, you don't like the music? No, open line is on. I don't want to miss it. So I see it as an essential service to this province. So I'm D. Ludd. Thank you for your service, people, and have a great morning. The very same to you, Alex. Thank you for your time. All right, bye-bye. Yeah, I always get the back and forths, you know. The people make the argument that voting should be mandatory. I think that might be a step too far, to be honest with you. I mean, I don't feel like government should tell me I have to do a variety of things, including cast a vote. But I've never heard a realistic argument opposed to what I say about apathy. When the politicians are knowing they only have to capture X percentage of the population, because only X percentage of the population pays any attention, is going to intend on voting or not, we're just kind of making their life easier. I'm not suggesting we need to go out of our way to make politicians' life more difficult, but there's something to be said for them having to work as hard as possible to gain the confidence and the support of more and more individuals. It just kind of makes sense to me. And I think that creates, you know, even better public policy in the long run. And on that, where people choose to be a candidate, and I appreciate when folks throw their hat in the ring, regardless of what party they're representing, or representing a municipal ward, or whatever the case may be. But you read a story here this morning. It's about the hostile environment that's been created, especially on social media, and it was pretty poignant. Of the province's 17 17 largest communities, almost half the mayors have been acclaimed. Only one candidate was nominated to run in those races. They automatically claimed those seats. Some of it is, people might have busy lives and simply don't have any interest in running, but certainly a lot of it, and comments I've heard from people who have in the past considered running for political office at whatever level, now they look at what the conversation looks like and what the tone and tenor of the pushback is, especially on social media. They're like, are you kidding? I'm not doing that. I'm not putting myself in that position. They're not wrong. I mean, discourse and calling politicians out and holding them to account and all the rest, absolutely important part of a functioning democracy. But you see it as much as I do. If you're on social media, some of it is way, way over the top. Absolutely outrageous. Now, it's hard to know whether or not some of those accounts that are constantly posting the same gibberish aimed at the same politicians day in and day out, whether or not they're actual human beings, I think it's a different conversation. But we're setting ourselves up to the point where lots of good people wouldn't dare enter the role of politics, given just how wild it is out there. Anyway, let's get a break for the news. That's 3 for 3 on time today. Gold star for the host. Don't go away.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to Curtis Saunders, running for a council position in Happy Valley Goose Bay. Good morning, Curtis. You're on the air.
Good morning to you, sir. How was everything down in Newfoundland, Autumn part of the province?
A reasonable day here. Curtis, let me put you on hold. Dave will clear that up for you. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to a candidate for an at-large council position in St. John's. Yeah, Wallace Ryan. Wallace, you're on the air.
How you doing there this morning, Paddy?
I'm doing better when I have a phone line that I can actually hear someone on, so we'll see if we clear that one up for you. Is Curtis back there, Dave? Will I try line 6 again? No? All right, let's keep rolling here and go to line number 3. Charles, you're on the air. Hi, Charles. Charles on line number 3. Subject matter, Targa? No? Okay, let's see here. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Craig Scott. He's seeking re-election as the mayor of Torbay. Craig, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy. Good morning. How are you?
Not too bad. How about you?
Not too bad. Listen, I primarily called in this morning to talk about the current water ban that the town has on. So our water supply is at critical levels, really. It's 8 feet below our normal levels. We've been monitoring our flow meters to make sure that people are respecting the ban that we have on, but we need them to do more and use the least amount of water as they can, because until we get some rain, the pond is not going to replenish itself.
It's amazing to me just how many communities, now I guess the reasons are clear, with limited precipitation last winter, the extended long, hot, dry summer days that we had, how many reservoirs in different communities in the province are at all-time lows. Some, for instance, out in Summerside, I think it was, dried up completely, like bone dry.
It did, and it is a matter of, we had very little spring runoff. The amount of rain that we've had this summer has been extremely low, and we started our water conservation measures back in June, and then in I think July or August we started with the ban to try and make people more aware of exactly the dire circumstance that we're in, and that the pond level continues to drop, and the only thing that's going to help it is if we get some precipitation over a period of time. It's going to be tense for the next couple of months, that's for sure.
Yeah. So is the thought that people are not abiding by the conservation order? Because, for some it goes in one ear, out the other. Like, for instance, a water conservation order in the city of St. John's has been in place for a couple of years anyway. And so things like, certain times of day, certain days of the week where you're allowed to do X, Y, and Z, wash your car, water your lawn, those types of things. Nobody's paying any attention to that. I know nobody is a very general way to put it, but I would suggest the vast majority of the people in the city don't even know the conservation order is in place, let alone abide by it.
Right, and I think we've been trying to communicate it out in the town over various media with our phone system, the social media and stuff like that, and I'm hoping, and we've seen the decrease in the flows since from month over month, But I think that we need to do more, and people need to realize that you are the people that are on the water supply. You're the only ones that can control how much water that we're using. And, you know, if it comes to a circumstance where we lose additional pressure or more capacity, then, you know, that's going to be a really critical situation for those people that are on that supply. And you know, they need to take it in their own hands to make sure that they're not overusing the water.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we can't get too far into the forever chemicals that have poisoned so many wells in your community, because now it's at a class action. We can't get any comment from the government on it, and that would be the federal government because it's their responsibility. Anything else you want to bring forward here this morning while we have you?
Well, I think that now that we are in election mode, and you did mention that I'm running for re-election, and I think that I've had a good record over the last 8 years as mayor and 12 years on council. Our town has improved our infrastructure. The water situation, we started trying to get on the regional water supply, and of course that needs to be expanded, and we had to take the decision to go with a new water supply, and we do have some funding from the federal government. But I think that the PFAS issue is a serious one. We've noticed now that it's spread to additional areas of the town that we never expected. And, you know, we're keeping the lines of communication open with the federal government and Transport Canada, asking them to expand their testing area. And, you know, this new water supply that we're going to be developing is critical to being able to provide water to those residents. The people that I've been talking to, they're not too sure if these treatment systems that the federal government is proposing is going to be the ultimate long-term solution. They feel that a municipal water supply would be the permanent solution for the long term. And, you know, we're going to have to get back at the table with the federal government and our MP, Joanne Thompson, to encourage the federal government to come with more money than what they did, because the amount of money that we have approved for this project is not going to be enough to run water to all their homes, that's for sure. And, you know, that this is a critical issue for our town right now, and going forward for the foreseeable future with water. I mean, if you don't have water, you don't have anything. So that's my main focus right now. And, you know, there's other things you can do more than one thing at a time. But this summer has proven that even our current water supply in dry times like this is not going to be enough even to serve our own residents without having these conservation measures in place. So it's critical that we get that new water supply developed and move forward from there.
Very specific question from a resident in Torbay.
Yep.
Will the landowners in the new watershed area, Great Pond, be compensated for their land?
Well, that's something that we deal with going forward. We have purchased property from landowners in the watershed to build our new facility. So in cases like that where the town needs a piece of property to be able to put that infrastructure in, we have purchased. We purchased one piece, and I know that we probably purchased another one for our current supply in North Pond to put our water tower on. So in those cases, we'd have to look at them from a case-by-case basis.
Okay, and I suppose there's probably a little bit too far down into the weeds to get to case by case, because there are obviously cases would be different. Craig, I appreciate your time. Good luck out there.
Thank you, Paddy.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Bye-bye. It's Craig Scott, running for re-election as the mayor of Torbay. Let's see if we can get a better line on line number 6. Good morning to a candidate. Running up in Happy Valley Goose Bay for council, that's Curtis Saunders. Curtis, you're on the air.
Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning.
My name is Curtis Saunders. I'm born here in Happy Valley Goose Bay and raised here. What else can I say about myself? I was born here and raised here. My father and grandfather were one of the first 3 families that settled here in Happy Valley Goose Bay: Saunders, the Broomfields, and the Proles. I've seen this community grow very, very good. I mean, it's unfortunately within the last 10, 15 years that we have a lot of, I should say, crime and violence and drug addictions. It's just like any other part of the province or Canada, I should say. We need help. And the town council can only do so much. With a lot of our issues here in the town of Happy Valley Goose Bay, it falls on the provincial jurisdiction and the federal. I'm quite, as a candidate here, I will address anyone's concerns. I love to see lower taxes. I love to see more roads done here. I love to see more things for the youth. I love to see a new curling club. I love to see a new garage. I love to see a new town hall. That's some of my issues.
Yeah.
I'm running on.
Some of which can be achieved if there were greater community benefits for industrial expansion in Lab West. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. Like on housing, I don't know why we don't negotiate with the mining companies that we put the onus on them to provide housing. You know, because if they built it, it'd be part of the royalty regime. Let's just earmark some of the money specifically for housing. Then things like, no seniors complex. I think the Premier, John Hogan, said there was going to be a 40-unit seniors complex to be built in Lab West if and when they're successful. Long overdue. But other issues, you're right. I mean, if you talk about public safety, and whether it be as a responsibility or, being brought to bear by the transient population, whatever the case may be, public safety is not really municipal bailiwick. I mean, the municipalities can do some things, but this requires the province and the feds, of course, when we talk about the RCMP.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And regarding the housing here in Happy Valley, Goose Bay, we have a lot of land here. It's very unfortunately, we have a hard time getting housing here. There hasn't been very much construction in the last 5-6 years. There's been a few last year or so. We had 60 houses being built for low income or for seniors. That is very good. Is well needed. I look at Goose Bay when it was first built here, when the Americans was here. We had hundreds and hundreds of people here. We had the base. We had hundreds of people up there, and now all those buildings are tore down. Goose Bay is crying for help, and regarding for businesses, I love to see low-level flying come back here. I love to see the Americans come back here. I love to see this here. I love to see Gull Island. Hey, Gull Island, if you're going to go. But at what expense do you develop it? I say you have to consult with the people first and foremost. Now, I don't have all the answers or the questions or answers, but as far as a citizen that was born here and raised here, as I've seen, as anyone else that's born here or even raised here, living their family here, that sees everything that's going on day to day, we're affected by it every day. If you're Aboriginal or not Aboriginal, we want what's best for the community. It's not what the politicians are saying. We had 10 years of the Liberal government. I spoke to Mr. Hogan. I spoke to Mr. Feary. And I spoke to the town councils, this council and previous councils. As anyone that knows me, Curtis Saunders' name is known a little bit in Goose Bay, but I'm a person that will speak. I will not be dictated to, but I will first and foremost. If you have an issue with me as a candidate or as an elected official, if you have a complaint with me, by all means, I ask you to address me, not to talk behind my back, and then no, I'm not in there for the paycheck. I'm a senior citizen, 64 years old. I'm on a pension. I'm on a fixed income. What do I want? I want what's best for the community and for the residents.
And we appreciate your time this morning. Good luck, Curtis.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Curtis Saunders, running for council, Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Say good morning to another candidate running at large here in town, Wallace Ryan. Wallace, you're on the air.
How are you doing this morning, Paddy?
I'm very well, thank you. How about you?
Oh, not too bad, not too bad.
Good.
Now, of course, you know me as a cartoonist, a teacher, and sometimes politician. And it's funny to listen to some people how they say, what's wrong with the people who are running for office? You have to be mad or whatever. But you know what? It's the love of St. John's that's driving me to run. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to run as different a campaign as I can from all the big people. I'm out there on my e-bike going up and down the streets of St. John's because I find people don't really answer their doors anymore. So I'm taking it to the streets. I'm going out there. I'm stopping. I'm talking to everyone I come across, and it's been refreshing. The things I've heard about. And it's mainly, actually, funny enough, a lot of stuff I've been listening to this morning on your show about the crime, the drugs, rent controls, a lot of stuff like that. Now, when it comes to, because I heard there was a guy talking about an hour ago about the situation here at the school at Bishop Field, and I live actually 3 doors up from the fence that he was talking about. And when they're all talking about that meetings and who was, who could take the credit for it, the credit actually goes to the community here, the people actually living around here, because it was people around here who were constantly phoning the police to get them down to deal with them. It was the people living in this neighborhood who reported to the police about the drug dealing going on at one of the social housing just around the corner from here. And it was the people in this neighborhood who actually had a crack house now on Military Road, closed down. We found out who the owner was, everything like that, and we put pressure, and we had them driven out. And that's unfortunately what it's come down to. It's that basically the politicians have abandoned the people, and it's the communities that are having to step up and take control. As a matter of fact, my e-bike that I was talking about, I got a flat there the first week of the campaign. So it took my only campaign vehicle out of the mix, and when I brought it down to get it fixed, the mechanic said to me, "You know what caused your flat tire? It was a syringe." A syringe, Patty. I mean, I was as shocked as anyone. And that's one of the big problems around here. And it comes with the drugs, the crime, and the everything. And what he mentioned, too, about the open-air drug market down there on Queens Road, it's ridiculous. And not only that, but we have actually even talked to some of the addicts and all that in the neighborhood and all that, and they all laugh and talk about how they pick up their drugs supplied to them by the government, and they cross the street there and they sell it and they buy crack. And that's what we're doing, is we're supplying unknowingly we're supplying crack to a lot of people in the downtown area.
Just back up 2 steps, and how are we directly or indirectly supplying crack to people in the downtown? I just want to make sure I understand your point.
Well, like I say, the drugs that they're supplying, the methadone and whatever drugs they're supplying the addicts, they're taking that drug because they don't make them take it inside these facilities, which actually is what they should be doing, is they leave these facilities with the drugs, they go out, and this is the addicts themselves told us, they sell the drugs that they were given for free, they take that money and they go buy crack.
Yeah, I mean, in any site that's providing methadone or Suboxone or whatever the case may be, there is zero excuse why that does not have to be administered under supervision on site.
Oh, completely. And that's what everyone here has been pushing for. So like I say, no matter what people say, it really was the community. And that's what I love about living in this town. Now, also, too, next to that fence, there's a house there. There's an 80-year-old woman living there. And she is too afraid to come out into her little backyard there to sit back, to have a cup of tea or whatever. She's basically housebound now because of what was going down in that alleyway there. And what was going down in the alleyway, it's just too disgusting to talk about, right? And it just shouldn't be happening here in St. John's. It's time that basically, myself, I've always been more of a fighter than a bystander. I don't know if you know how I faced off against 200 anti-seal hunt protesters when I was a 20-year-old artist in Toronto, but I have always fought for Newfoundland, and I will be fighting for the city. That's why I'm running for at large rather than Ward 2 alone, which I did last time. And to me, my biggest asset is my love of St. John's. This is a great place to live. I'm always talking about it to people I know on the mainland and that. And as part of that love, I actually got to send out a little thank you to Black Panel Press, which is a company here, and they released a book there last week that myself and 7 other comic book artists worked on called Town, St. John's in Comics. And it's a little book that's basically like a little love story in comic book form for this city. It's 8 different artists talking about what they love about their different neighborhoods. And that love for St. John's is what I'm bringing to my campaign. It's, I not only have I worked, like I say, as an instructor and all that, but I have been an activist municipally. I helped found the pedestrian mall with Debbie Hanlon. I helped save the gazebo up over there in Benham Park, which they were going to tear down. And it's a beautiful little thing now that's still standing, and people are skating around it now and loving it. So what I say to people is, if you want someone who's going to fight for you, I'm your man.
Wallace, I appreciate your time. You've had the last word. Good luck out there.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye. It is a great day. This fallish weather works for me. All right, good show today. Big thanks to all hands, all the callers, the listeners, the emailers, the tweeters. You're all right. We will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning, right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.